On this Sunday night, poignant processions for Canada's fallen officers. The annual memorial for police killed in the line of duty.
It's very timely that we're here this weekend.
As the suspect in last week's deadly shooting of a BC Mountie faces first-degree murder. Fatal building collapse.
It's really sad that, that we have to go through these things.
Residents in a Montreal neighborhood shaken. Plus, why they blame building neglect. Exodus into Armenia. Tens of thousands of refugees flee following a deadly military offensive in Nagorno-Karabakh. Mission complete.
A journey of 1 billion miles to asteroid Bennu and back has come to an end.
NASA's space capsule carrying asteroid samples lands on Earth.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The risks this country's police officers face are once again in focus today as a BC community mourns an RCMP officer shot and killed last week. Flowers, candles and messages of condolence have been piling up at the Ridge Meadows RCMP station, honoring the memory of Constable Rick O'Brien, killed in the line of duty. The 51-year-old officer and 7-year veteran of the force was fatally gunned down while searching a home in Coquitlam, BC. The suspect, 25-year-old Nicholas Belmar, remains in custody and has been charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. O'Brien is the 10th Canadian police officer killed on duty by violence over the last 12 months. And with somber ceremonies across Canada paying tribute to officers who have fallen, it's another stark reminder of their grave sacrifice. Mike Drolet has our top story tonight.
There's no stoicism at a memorial. Flowers are dropped off, and in that moment of silence that follows, you hold your loved ones a little bit closer.
He's just a wonderful guy.
Steve Ball remembered his friend Rick O'Brien as a champion for at-risk youth who dreamed of marrying his two passions together, being an officer and working with kids.
And I think he would have made a wonderful liaison officer. I think he would have done a fantastic job. I wish he had gotten that chance.
All of his dreams came crashing to a halt in a chaotic scene in Coquitlam, BC on Friday. O'Brien was on a team executing a search warrant as part of a drug investigation. Police say the suspect opened fire, killing O'Brien and wounding 2 other officers. One officer was seen leaving the scene with a tourniquet around his leg, while a bloodied suspect in boxer shorts was put in an ambulance. 25-year-old Nicholas Belmar has been charged with first-degree murder.
Nick's going to actually talk for me because he's whispering in my ear already.
I'll introduce them. This is Constable Rick O'Brien with the Ridge Meadows RCMP detachment.
Even though O'Brien didn't join the RCMP until he was 44, he and his wife Nicole Longacre, parents to 6 children, were active in community outreach, visiting schools and speaking at the 2020 Gratitude and Appreciation Summit.
Because I think what a lot of the people don't generally, they kind of almost take it for granted that these guys are out and ladies are out there serving and protecting the community and not realizing what they're sacrificing, their families are sacrificing to do so.
Those sacrifices were on full display in cities across the country as part of the National Police and Peace Officers Memorial, held every year on the last Sunday of September. The recency of O'Brien's death made the day that much harder.
We're all grieving, and it is a very fresh experience for all of us, and to be able to come together today and reflect on that loss, I think is very, very healing.
On this day, police, especially those that knew Rick O'Brien, needed it. Mike Drolet, Global News.
To breaking news now. Jewish advocacy groups are outraged after a man who fought for a Nazi unit during World War II was honored in the House of Commons. During Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Ottawa on Friday, MPs gave 98-year-old Yaroslav Hunka a standing ovation. He was introduced by Speaker Anthony Rota as a war hero who fought for the 1st Ukrainian Division. The division was also a voluntary unit that was under the command of the Nazis. In a statement issued Sunday, the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center said it was deeply disturbed Hunka was invited, and an apology is owed to all Holocaust survivors. survivors. Speaker Rota says no one, including fellow parliamentarians and the Ukrainian delegation, was aware of his intention or remarks beforehand. Rota says he regrets the decision and apologizes to Jewish communities in Canada and around the world, and he accepts full responsibility for his actions. The Prime Minister's office says no advance notice was provided to them or the Ukrainian delegation about this, adding the Speaker had his own allotment of guests, which were determined by him and his office alone. Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre described it as an appalling error in judgment and is calling for the Prime Minister to apologize, saying his protocol office is responsible for vetting all guests for state visits like this. Officials are trying to figure out what led to a deadly building collapse in Montreal Saturday. One man was killed and 2 others were severely injured. Multiple investigations are underway. As Dan Spector reports, all signs point to a renovation project turning into a tragedy.
Butcher André Baudouin was at work around 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon when he heard a massive boom. It was like an earthquake, he says. Baudouin went outside the shop. He manages to find a chaotic scene. Part of this building had collapsed and people were stuck inside. Witnesses described screams heard from inside the broken structure. Firefighters and paramedics arrived soon after and evacuated the mixed residential commercial building.
First of all, they have to deal with the panic around the scene, so they have to be sure that the scene is secure.
A look through a small hole in the door clearly shows part of the floor on the main level gave way. A man who was underneath was killed. 2 more people were transported to hospital with serious injuries, and another 2 had minor injuries. All the victims in their 30s or 40s. It took hours for firefighters to reach the man who lost his life.
We had to really secure the site, so we installed poles in the basement to make sure it was safe enough.
The side of the building where the collapse happened had been abandoned since a fire 2 years ago. But Quebec's Workplace Safety Board, the CNESST, tells Global News the disaster took place during construction work inside. Baudouin and others said they'd seen men working. This side of the building was deemed safe by an engineer, and workers and residents were allowed back in. But the community is still stunned by the violent tragedy.
Really terrible to hear. Distressing.
It's really sad that, that we have to go through these things.
Police say they are offering their support to investigations being done by the coroner's office and the CNESST. Baudouin said he saw the workers removing wood and blocks from the building. He wonders if the collapse was caused by human error.
Quebec's Workplace Health and Safety Board says the investigation could last several months as they interview witnesses and try to piece together what happened. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
Now to the mass exodus from Nagorno-Karabakh, a mostly ethnic Armenian enclave inside Azerbaijan. About 120,000 ethnic Armenians are expected to flee after Azerbaijan effectively took control of the disputed region by force, resulting in 200 deaths. Hundreds of people have already crossed into Armenia. As Redmond Shannon reports, Armenians around the world, including in Canada, are calling for help to ensure the safety of those deciding to stay.
Hundreds of ethnic Armenians arrive in Armenia, escorted there by Russian peacekeepers, days after fleeing their homes in Nagorno-Karabakh. This man said, "In the last few days, we barely survived the shelling. It was scary." On Tuesday, Azerbaijani forces moved to take full control of the mostly ethnic Armenian region, forcing many of the 120,000 residents from their homes. 200 people died before Wednesday's ceasefire, some of them civilians. Nagorno-Karabakh is an enclave inside the territory of Azerbaijan, but controlled for decades by ethnic Armenians. Since a war in 2020, its only land connection to Armenia was a corridor patrolled by Russian peacekeepers. In recent months, Azerbaijan blockaded that corridor, leading to shortages of food, fuel and medicines, a prelude to Azerbaijan's military offensive. Armenia's Prime Minister says evacuations to his country may be the only way to ensure the safety of residents. At the UN, his foreign minister appealed for help to prevent what he called the risk of genocide.
A sustainable and viable international mechanisms for preventing the ethnic cleansing of the indigenous population of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Armenian Canadians gathered in Toronto Sunday expressing similar concerns. Among them, filmmaker Atom Ugoyan.
This is destroying an essential part of our heritage, an essential part of our culture and our identity.
The Azeri government has dismissed concerns of ethnic cleansing.
Azerbaijan is determined to reintegrate ethnic Armenian residents of the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan as equal citizens.
The conflict has its roots in the chaos of the end of the Soviet Union, when thousands of Azeris and Armenians were killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. This evacuee says it's her third time being forced from Nagorno-Karabakh. Right now, no one knows if she'll return again and what might happen to those who remain. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Best and final offer. Coming up, the potential breakthrough in the Hollywood writers' strike. In Hollywood, there's significant progress in negotiations between big studio bosses and the union representing film and television writers on strike. After months of job action, there are signs both sides may be on the cusp of a deal. That doesn't automatically mean productions can resume, though. And with actors still on strike, disruptions are far from over. Brittany Rosen explains.
It's been 146 days since Hollywood film writers have been on the picket lines, but that could soon change with a deal reportedly on the horizon.
There's optimism, there's hope, but nothing's real until the ink's dry on the contracts.
A positive signal towards the end of a months-long dispute. The major film and television studios delivered their best and final offer to writers Saturday evening, and both sides met again Sunday, the eve of Jewish holiday Yom Kippur.
There seems to have been an informal deadline of wanting to get a deal done, if possible, before Yom Kippur.
It comes as the strike inches closer to surpassing the longest work stoppage in union history at 154 days. Writers and SAG-AFTRA actors who joined the strike in mid-July have been fighting for a number of overlapping demands, including higher wages and worker protections, including the use of artificial intelligence.
We're willing to go as long as we need to get this done.
Once a deal is reached, it needs to be ratified, which experts say could take 2 to 3 weeks. While writers would pick off where they left off, it doesn't mean filming will be taken off pause.
We can't make anything without actors, so nothing is going to be resolved until the actors get a deal.
And when actors eventually negotiate their contract, industry experts say there will be all sorts of booking conflicts due to the strike.
We're not going to see production at sort of normal, smooth running mode and levels until, January.
With each day that passes, more money and jobs are being lost. Experts say the economic impact of writers and actors strikes have surpassed a staggering $5 billion. It's had a ripple effect for the Canadian economy and is being increasingly felt among numerous industries.
Even when things end, they're going to find that it's very difficult to crawl out from under the mess that's been made over the last couple of months.
And ramping up production during a forecasted recession, Lander says, will only add to those challenges. Brittany Rosen, Global News, Washington.
Unifor says its 5,600 workers at Ford have voted to accept a 3-year deal with the automaker. The union says the agreement addresses all issues raised by members during the latest round of bargaining, including wages, pension, and job security amid the transition to electric vehicle manufacturing. Unifor says it will use the new agreement as a pattern for negotiations with General Motors and Stellantis, and will announce which of those companies is the next target in the near future. Ahead, one of the world's top music video directors on breaking down barriers to racial justice. From Drake to Rihanna and Nicki Minaj, Director X has filmed more than 100 music videos. He's also built an impressive resume in film and television, including his latest project, a take on Robin Hood.
We don't do the flashy, gotta how we live.
The show, which will air on Global and Stack TV, has a female Robin Hood and a cast of black protagonists. Our Farah Nasser sat down with Director X to talk about the need for more diversity in the industry.
How did a kid from Brampton, Ontario, get to this level?
Persistence, luck,
You know,
A lot of things converge together.
a lot of things converge together. Persistence is a big part of it.
Was it hard to break into the industry?
Yeah, I had to move to America. I had to leave Canada.
You couldn't have broken into the industry in Canada?
Never.
What are the biggest barriers right now that BIPOC filmmakers face?
There's a part of filmmaking where getting in is its own mysterious journey, right? You ask a grip and a gaffer and a director and a producer, you never know what they're gonna say, right? How they made it into the business. So there's just the business. It's almost like Harry Potter, like there's a secret door somewhere, and if you can find it, you can you know what I'm saying, work on a film set. There's that big part of it, and then as well, changing the minds of people to see the talent and the skill, and not a race or a gender, or you know what I mean?
No, explain it to me.
They just assume you couldn't do it because you're a black guy, you're a black kid. They just assume you couldn't do it because you're a black woman. They assumed you couldn't do it, you know what I mean? Like that was a given, you can't do this, and that was all the way through.
You think that prejudice still exists?
Of course. I mean, you got your super prejudice, like I don't like, and then you got the subtle prejudice is actually the scarier one. The stories I tell about some person speaking to me disrespectfully or down to me or assuming I don't know what I know have been in the Canadian television industry.
More than in the States?
It doesn't happen in the States.
So it's interesting that you say that it's more apparent here. I mean, we come across as so polite, right, here in Canada. I'm curious to understand, why do you think you've seen that more here in Canada?
In the States, there's a long history of relationships, white folks and black folks, and you know what I mean, how they interact. It's its own thing. That isn't here, right? And what is here, a lot of it is gleaned off of Americans' entertainment, you know what I mean? So there's just people who haven't had that experience, haven't been around other folks, and just it is what it is, man.
So what do you think the scene is right now? I know when you started, you were saying that, like, you know, it was hard to break in and that kind of thing. What do you think it's like right now for black filmmakers?
I mean, there's definitely a lot more programs. It's all very focused on directors and writers and producers. I'd love to see programs for the crew. Train you to be a grip, train you to be a gaffer, train you to be a set deck, train you how to be a production designer, train you how to do hair and makeup, train you, right? There's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of things going on a film set. Not everything has to be in the big chair. I love going to a job, and that's in America. The last job I did, all the electrics were black, all the gaffers were black. It's a big deal.
And here it's not like that?
In general, for a city that one of our industries is filmmaking, we should be training filmmakers on those nuts and bolts.
How do you feel about how the industry has evolved in the years that you've been doing this?
It's good, man. It's slow moving, but good to see some color in the audience. It's good to go on some sets and see some, you know what I mean? Turn on the TV. Like, I joke about it, but yeah, Robin Hood is an all-black Robin Hood. That's a crazy, you know what I'm saying? It's a crazy thing, but they're doing it.
There's a lot to celebrate.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director X's Robin Hood premieres on Global and Stack TV this Wednesday. Next, asteroid samples dating back to the birth of the solar system land on Earth.
We have touchdown. I repeat, EDL. FRC has touchdown.
It's a moment 7 years in the making for NASA, as its first ever asteroid sample collected from space landed back on Earth in the Utah desert. The space rubble could bring us one step closer to solving Earth's biggest mystery. And as Eric Sorensen explains, Canada is getting a piece of the interstellar treasure.
Nice close-up view. You can see the parachute disconnected.
There it is. For the first time since 2016, the little capsule from OSIRIS REX is back on Earth.
Lockheed Martin Safety is performing hazardous environment assessments.
The charred 50-kilogram space pod arrived with cargo that is little more than dust and grit. But for scientists, it is 250 grams of wonder and knowledge.
And liftoff of OSIRIS REX.
It was an outrageous mission to send a spacecraft to an asteroid millions of kilometers away. It took OSIRIS REX 2 years to get to Tiny Bennu and another 2 years to study the rocky surface to find a place to touch down. And when the moment came, a long arm plunged into the gravelly surface, gathered about half a pound of material, and sealed it in the capsule.
Sample collection is complete, and the back-away burn has executed.
2 years after leaving Bennu and with a 2 billion kilometer journey home, success was always going to come down to the final few hours and minutes. OSIRIS REX jettisoned the sample return capsule, fired thrusters to veer away from colliding with Earth, and the capsule then plunged into the atmosphere. At a precise angle, so as not to burn up, the tiny capsule finally floated by parachute into the Utah desert, the precious cargo intact.
These samples that we've brought back, those are going to be a treasure for scientific analysis for years and years and years to come.
Because the Earth remakes itself over eons, there are no original rocks here. The carbon samples from Bennu, pristine and 4 billion years old, could tell us about our own origins.
These are all the building blocks for life. Maybe we can learn a little bit about, what was happening in the solar system at that time. How did our planet form?
The Canadian Space Agency contributed laser navigation to OSIRIS REX, and for that, the CSA will receive a few grams of Bennu dust to study. The first job is to ensure the Earth's environment doesn't pollute the asteroid dust.
It's very challenging with some of our analyses to protect the sample at the level that we would store it long term.
As for OSIRIS REX, it missed hitting Earth and will now circle the Sun for a few years before chasing down another asteroid that's expected to fly very close to Earth in 2029. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is Halifax, Nova Scotia. Have a great night.